hello everybody. We have Armani on. Like we just recorded with Armani. It was great. Backpack exchange, awesome.
We
Armani,
can't even do our normal intro because we're so
I
stunned.
can't even do it. Like we literally just got such great positive comments from Armani about how much he enjoyed being on the episode with us, and we're just like, oh, thank you, Armani. Thank you so much.
We're on cloud 9 right now.
Very much on cloud 9. Armani gave us some alpha. I mean, unfortunately, the alpha is going to come out. This episode's going to go out after the alpha is like public, but still, like he told us, like it was cool.
Dude, I freaking
backpack exchange. Armani,
backpack exchange.
Amazing.
I don't know. There's some pretty dope teams in Solana. And I don't
There's
know.
There's amazing teams in Solana.
It is. Look,
Coral is definitely one of them.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say you make fun of me for sort of after every episode saying like this is my new favorite person in Solana, but that honestly just speaks volumes to like the caliber of people that we have here. And absolutely. I also don't think that anyone would fault me for saying that Armani is my favorite person in Solana. Literally, right?
No.
Like,
and if they would, they don't believe in Solana, so it's like it's fun.
No,
like
but
Armani's
you can't listen to Armani and you can't listen to Armani and not be bullish on whatever he's involved in.
Oh, absolutely. Like Armani's breakpoint talk of when FTX happened, like the world crumbled around FTX. Armani was asked a bunch of like, are you going to stay in the Solana ecosystem? And his breakpoint talk, he's got tweets from Raj and Anatoly and him. It's, I'll leave when they leave. And Raj and Anatoly are like, I'll leave when Armani leaves. And so like, great, we're all still here. We're all going to keep going. And it's like, that is the epitome of the Solana ecosystem. And I fucking love it.
Yeah, it's freaking awesome. Look, for the listeners, we talk a bunch about Backpack Exchange here. I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's awesome. I know there's probably some listeners who are like diehard self-custody only, and that's totally fine, right? I think
but you can have that with Backpack Exchange.
Exactly. The whole point here, well, not with Exchange, but with Backpack, right? Like the whole point here is that they provide a spectrum of custody, but the exchange itself, will allow you to do things that you can't do with just self-custody. And I think we can be pragmatic and say that both options are necessary. Right.
Oh yeah.
We need Backpack Exchange. We need Backpack, the self-custody wallet. We need all sorts of products across, a vast spectrum of use cases and needs, and users can be educated and choose the options that make the most sense for them. Yeah, this episode really was awesome. We talked a lot about that, but also we just talked about what it takes to build an exchange and why it matters and why it's important and who it'll be available to, all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah, it was, Armani shed some light on all of the, like, we're devs, we build stuff. There's a lot of devs build stuff, but people don't really talk about the compliance side. And Armani really shared a lot of information about the compliance and like what that looks like, why they're doing some of the things that they're doing. And I think that was probably one of my favorite parts, aside from the compliments are always nice. It was really cool.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Nothing in this podcast is or should be considered financial advice. Any opinions and thoughts expressed are solely those of the individual. They do not represent the opinions of any entity. Enjoy.
I've been incredibly excited to chat with you even since before Breakpoint, right? Because it's just like, I feel like we had such a good conversation last time that I was just like, we got to get another episode with Armani. And then Breakpoint happened. And your announcement
and then
happened.
That big announcement happened.
And I was like, oh, what the fuck? Let's make this happen sooner. I'm not going to lie, man. I am a little mind blown with the breadth of what you guys build. And it's like not even just the breadth. Yes, it's crazy breadth, but you also seem to knock it out of the park every time. Do you sleep? Do you you guys are, I'm going to say you guys because I know there's a team behind you too, but like you guys are superhuman.
Yes. There's a painting behind him, James.
I can't take credit for the spinning, but yes, there's an amazing team. I don't know if you can tell, but like this is my like not sleeping face and general kind of appearance. No, we're just like pushing right now.
Pretty good.
There's just like so much to do. But yeah, we're launching a lot of stuff right now. We just got the first phase of the exchange going. So we got identity verification, sign up, sign in, KYC onboarding, and this next week, really, by the time this probably comes out, we'll just be pumping out phase after phase and getting this thing stood up and, launching it. So it's been a crazy kind of couple months.
Yeah, dude, that's wild. Well, I don't know how many listeners are not going to already know what it is we're going to be talking about, but just for, so that everyone's aligned and we're on the same page, the big thing here is Backpack Exchange. Is that like the full name, Backpack Exchange?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So like, and you announced it at Breakpoint. Super cool announcement. For anyone listening who hasn't watched it already, like go to YouTube and watch it. But of course we will talk, like we will go wherever this conversation takes us, but that is absolutely like the thing right now in my mind, and I'm sure in Nick's mind. And so probably where we have lots of questions. So let's start from, let's do this. Let's start chronologically here, where it's like, when did you and the team first start thinking, hey guys, maybe we could build a better exchange?
Yeah, absolutely. So when FTX originally collapsed, right? I mean, we all know the story. Not only were my team was crushed, but so many teams were crushed. The entire industry was really crushed. And at that point in time, we really just had tunnel vision. It was just like, stay alive, just like get to the next milestone. We weren't really thinking about the future on like a long-term time horizon. To be honest, it was more just like, don't panic and make sure you have enough runway to, keep the lights on and just like, motivate yourself and the team and the world to not give up. Right. And so that was basically our emotional state, I think, for a bit after FTX. And we got to, we released Backpack and we released MadLads, and it was really after the MadLads mint, which was, I want to say about 6 months ago, that, we really got a chance to stop and reflect, and it was successful and it minted out, and we had an incredible community. And at the time, I think there was a lot of people that were looking at the exchange business and seeing the FTX hole, in the world, the void of a international spot and derivatives exchange that, there's obviously, a bunch of these other international exchanges that fill their own roles in the broader crypto ecosystem. But FTX was pretty unique for a number of different reasons on the product side, on the just, shipping velocity side, and so a lot of people, I think a lot of startups are really formed like in this time period where people were like, all right, exchanges are good businesses. Let's go build an exchange. And they raised money and went after it. And I was not originally tempted to do this because I felt very confident, about the engineering side, about the product side, about the marketing side. I did not feel confident at all about the compliance or the operational side of things. I feel like that is really the hardest part of an exchange. I think building it, to be frank, very easy, relatively speaking. It's a lot easier.
You mean technically, like the
code base to actually build it?
Just from like a programming point of view, like, yeah, we know how to build exchanges. Like this is like pretty well understood, technology. I think there's some stuff about crypto that makes it unique. And I think we've done a lot of interesting work on the engineering side. So, obviously things like zero knowledge proofs, things like MPC, things like building a robust, auditable system for not only yourself, but also for, just regulators or people that want to inquire about, there's a million different kind of rules to follow. And so it's a challenging problem. Don't get me wrong. But and maybe this is just because I'm a programmer and a product person, but from my point of view, that was a really known quantity. The really unknown quantity for me was really the compliance piece. And so never in a million years did I feel like I would be able to do it alone. And it was really a serendipitous series of events that, led me to teaming up with Can Sun, who is, one of the, he's basically the guy that's leading all the legal and operations for the exchange, where he's basically the Tom Brady. I mean, people don't know this because he's a lawyer, and lawyers tend to be in the background. And can you name any GCs of any companies? Probably not, right? But
just the one for Solana Foundation.
yeah. But he really is just like an incredible person. Like, he's really the Tom Brady of crypto law. Has just worked with every exchange under the sun. I mean, obviously FTX, but also he literally was the main, I don't know what the official term is, but one of the main kind of lawyers that wrote the Coinbase S1, did a bunch of stuff for, I don't know if technically that's allowed to be on a podcast or not, but, a bunch of exchanges, Kraken and others. And he is just an incredible person. And, when we decided to, or he was out there like kind of, post FTX, really trying to solve a lot of these problems. A lot of regulators from around the world, like, basically asked him, like, hey, what do we do? Right. And so he kind of went on this path of like helping exchanges get started up, helping regulators get a game plan for a post FTX world. How do you prevent this problem from happening again? Things like that. And, it was really once we came together that we felt like we can execute on all sides, because it's really a multifaceted problem. And so once that piece got shored up, we went full send. And that was kind of like a bit of the genesis story.
Nice. And you said that was just after the MadLads mint, when that all kind of came together?
That was really when it really started. Yeah.
Cool. What,
That's pretty cool.
at what point did he enter the picture and you were like, oh, we've got every piece of the puzzle now?
And did you already know him ahead of time, or did he just come into your world somehow?
No, I'd known him ahead of time. I was lucky enough he helped out with a lot of the early kind of just like boring legal work when we took investment, into the company originally, when kind of we spun up Coral and started originally working on XNFTs and Backpack and that whole endeavor. And so we basically just, started talking about, we were just catching up basically. And, he was somebody I admired and trusted a bunch. And we just felt like we can do it. Honestly, we were looking around at the world, and it's like obviously a huge opportunity, right? It's obviously just a super important piece of infrastructure for not only traders and, TradFi people, but also just for the broader crypto ecosystem. Even if you care about decentralized apps and self-custody, which we care a ton about, exchanges are extremely important. Like Coinbase, to their credit, has probably onboarded more people to self-custody than the majority of decentralized apps, right? Because you have this really great opportunity to progressively onboard people into the industry, where they start with somewhere where they're really familiar and they end up somewhere where they learn about this incredible kind of vibrant on-chain ecosystem. And so we were really kind of, I don't know, looking at it from that point of view and thinking it was a really important problem. And, all the while, like, a bunch of people just kept coming up to me and kept saying, Armani, you should do an exchange. Like, I literally had like 5 different people who I admired and respected a bunch, that I won't name, basically tell me this. And what's nice about kind of Backpack and the wallets and the NFT community is that it's a really good distribution channel for doing this. Wallets they're not exactly exchanges. It's a very different business, at least from an operational point of view. like I don't think most wallet teams can alone build an exchange. But from a UX point of view, it's pretty similar, right? You have a swapper, you have your wallet management, you send and receive tokens, you look at your transaction history. And so it was very natural to just, all right, let's just throw it into the app. And that was a really great place to start. And so, yeah, I'm rambling at this point, but I think that was a little bit of the genesis story.
No, that's great. I mean, given that history, I want to dig into the vision for Exchange, right? It sounds like, not even sounds like, it's like, this is what you guys do, is like you build stuff. And so you're actively building this, you're rolling things out as you're building, right? Like you guys are building the plane as you fly it. It seems like always, which is awesome, because you can kind of progressively roll out pieces that work and get feedback and iterate, which I think is super awesome. What is the grand vision? So like, well, actually, let me phrase that differently. If you had to say, like, what is different about Backpack Exchange versus, like a Coinbase, or a Binance or something like that, right? Like what is the thing that is special, or that you're trying to create that is special about Backpack Exchange?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think if you maybe take a step back and look at the product, I had this slide in my Breakpoint talk where I talked about the spectrum of custody. And on one side of the spectrum, you have full self-custody, right? Your keys, your coin, 24-word seed phrase, preferably some hardware wallet. You can maybe talk about more advanced things like multi-sigs and account abstraction and things like that, but full self-custody. The users tend to be extremely advanced. It's pretty tricky to get this right, but it's the maximum kind of, privacy preserving like key management system, right? This is how, using privacy preserving in a loose way. Most blockchains technically aren't privacy preserving, but I think, it's, you're not doxing all your details to everybody in the world, or at least you have the opportunity to not do that. And it's kind of the epitome of free speech. And it's really kind of what this whole crypto revolution that, a lot of us have been working on for the past, the majority of our kind of professional lives at this point now, really, really care about. And that's really like Backpack's like starting point, right? It's the ethos. It's like the culture. It's how we're oriented in the world. But on the other side of the spectrum, you have, a custody product, you have a compliance solution, you have a fully regulated, globally supervised, crypto native financial institution. And, one's kind of about decentralization and one's totally about centralization. And this kind of mirrors this kind of meme that Anatoly was talking about at Breakpoint, where Solana is building this parallel financial institution, parallel financial system. And I think that's a really nice metaphor, because if you think about traditional finance as one financial system and the crypto world as another financial system, you have these two custody solutions that span both sides. And I really view exchanges as more a bridge or an auxiliary system than anything else. It's really that connective tissue that allows you to bring value from the traditional world or the traditional economy into the crypto economy. And that's an extremely important service. It's important from the perspective of user onboarding, right? My first crypto, I don't know about you guys, but the first time I bought Ethereum was on Coinbase. First time I bought Bitcoin was on Coinbase. First time I bought Sol was on Coinbase. Or actually that might be FTX, but on centralized exchanges. And it's because of many different reasons. It's because of the great, Web 2 kind of native user management system, email, password, OTP. Great. It's because of the global banking and fiat rails. If I can swipe a card anywhere on the planet in any currency, or use a payment voucher, or even better, do a direct wire transfer from my bank directly into, my app, if you want to call it an exchange or a wallet or whatever, that is a really great user experience. And that's super important to get people into kind of the on-chain world. And if you're starting at the exchange as just an on-ramping tool or as a starting point, and then eventually ending into the wallet, that's just a really important flow to optimize for. And so, but then it goes further than that, right? So, you have great UX or intuitive UX with progressive kind of, a progressive journey into self-custody. You have the fiat component and the regulation component, which is extremely important. And that's honestly why this compliance piece is so critical. Because if you don't have compliance, you don't have licensing, you don't have a group of really experienced folks that know how to do this stuff, then you're not going to get those banking channels. You're not going to get those card providers. You're going to get in trouble with regulators around the world, and you're going to get kicked out of countries. And we're starting to see that with a lot of different folks that have tried to do this. It's much closer to building a Wall Street kind of institution than it is to building a Silicon Valley tech company in terms of the skills that are required. But then there's companies like Circle, which I think is an incredible example that I like to use, where you have this really high integrity, but they're basically an exchange. What they do is they custody fiat and they custody tokens. Sure, they don't have an order book, they're not trading or whatever, but they're creating and redeeming this tokenized asset where they're tokenizing fiat. And then they're bringing that fiat onto the respective blockchains. And USDC now is an extremely important product. It's super important to Solana, to Ethereum, to all these kind of cryptos. And it's just, honestly, it's a 10x improvement on the status quo. Stable coins are extremely important. And being able to tokenize that value is something that a regulated, compliant financial institution can do. And so for all of these reasons, this exchange piece is so important and it's so valuable. And it plays such a crucial role to continuing to expand the reach and the set of products of the broader crypto economy and really further ingraining it into our day-to-day lives, right? And I think that is one of the most, I think, exciting, I think things to work on right now. And I think there's just so much opportunity here because honestly, the barrier to entry is huge. I think there's a lot of wallets because, any group of devs can go build a wallet. It's, you need to be, a good engineer. You need to be security conscious. You need to, be able to work your way around crypto, but anybody can do it. And I think what's challenging about the exchange component is, for better or worse, these barriers exist. There's capital barriers. There's just domain specific kind of expertise barriers. There's just being able to pick up the phone call and get onboarded to, payment providers barriers. That's there's just so many different things. And so I'm rambling at this point, but I think that's a little bit how I see it.
That's super interesting, and that's actually one of the things that I'm very curious about because, like you said, there's a lot of wallets out there. There's a lot of people building tech and writing code and talking about that in public and semi-public ways, but no one really talks about the compliance aspect, especially from the exchange perspective. And so that's actually one of the things that I wanted to ask you was if there's any sort of details of the compliance journey and the journey to get compliant in jurisdictions all around the world. I think you, at your Breakpoint talk, you mentioned that Backpack Exchange is officially registered in UAE and Dubai, I think. And that's where it's its official location is, but you have to go through this compliance process in effectively every jurisdiction around the world. Those are going to be so different, and especially in blockchain and crypto, it's ever changing, and we're slowly starting to get better financial regulation and guidance from governments and nation states around the world. So I'm curious if there's anything that you can talk about or share in that regard.
So I think there's a couple components to it. So the first component is simply knowing the rules. I think one of the challenges that the crypto industry has faced is that it's turned away a lot of really incredible people because those people are risk averse from a just legal and emotional like integrity point of view. And I would identify as one of these people. Like I would never, I'm pretty risk averse. Like I don't want to do a token for this reason, even though I think tokens are incredible tools and super important tools. I think tokens are super unexplored technology, even though it doesn't seem that way because we've gone through all this ICO kind of craziness over the past, I guess, since I came into the industry 2017. But the rules are just super unclear. And you talk to different lawyers, you pay them a lot of money, and they all tell you different things. And you're like, okay, well, that wasn't very helpful, right? How am I supposed to, if I'm like a well-intentioned person that has a reasonable skill set and I want to make an impact on a world with this like emerging technology, how do I do it? And I think a lot of people, particularly engineers, see this and they just run away. Or they go work on things where it is more clear. And so just knowing the rules is super important. And then the question is, well, how do you know the rules? And, there's not really any like book you can read that tells you everything. It's like, maybe there's some cases or some precedent if you kind of know how to like, do that type of thing, which is like, okay, maybe I don't know how to do that.
And so reading and understanding case law is very difficult. Exactly, my wife is actively in law school now, so I get a slight glimpse into that. And it's not a skill set that I am interested in obtaining.
And it's like, there's probably not that many cases. And even if I did try to do that, like, I'm probably going to get it all wrong. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an engineer, right? And so really, I think what it comes down to is experience. And well, there's not that many law firms, and there's not a lot of big law firms with a lot of capital and a lot of connections and a lot of experience that have enough experience or exposure to the industry where they actually know what you can and can't do. Right. This is kind of a lot of the way lawyers work, right? It's not like black and white. It's making judgment calls based on, the way the world currently operates. Right. And knowing like, what the rules of the game are is extremely difficult. It's like, I cannot make those decisions alone. Right. And I can tell you firsthand, like, there have been a lot of decisions that I've made just for boring stuff, not even crypto stuff, just like how to set up a company, where like the lawyers, they fuck it up, excuse my language, but they screw it up. And that has big implications on you as an entrepreneur, right? It has tax implications, it has implications on your team, has implications on just like your reputation, right? Because they make you do stuff and then people see, and you're like, well, I don't know, should I do this? And the answer is like, well, I guess you're the lawyer. I'm listening to you, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And so this is such an important piece, which is just like knowing the rules. But that's like one piece, right? It's like, okay, maybe you find somebody that knows the rules. And then, after that component, it's like, well, you might know the rules, but now you have to build out this operational piece. You have to have like this team. And there's all of these different components that are totally unrelated to the product, but still require product input or require like engineering work. So like for a small example of this is like every day, we have to do user by user asset reconciliation. So go through every user on the exchange, look at all their balances, reconcile it against the blockchain, and generate these reports. And then it's not only that, but we have to do it for every jurisdiction a little bit differently. And it's like, well, how do I do it in the UAE versus how do I do it in Japan versus how do I do it in, Australia? And some jurisdictions require you to do things like have separate wallets. Other jurisdictions require you to have different monitoring rules, and it's all a bit different. And that you might have different rules for, different regulators, but then banks might have you do something else. Right. And banks are probably the most strict things because, well, they are extremely regulated. I mean, they have they're super large and have no incentive to change, and so really you have to listen. It's probably the most important piece of the puzzle, and so you also have to listen to the banks as if they are the for the lack of a better word, the word of God or whatever, and that's super important. And so there's all these different kind of things to understand. Then you have to operationalize that into a product. And it's everything from, generating reports and making sure that you're doing KYC onboarding correctly and asking the right questions, right? Different places might ask you different questions. It might require different things, whether it's proof of addresses or identity documents, or just simply blocking certain places because maybe you don't have a license, or maybe you can piggyback on the license of another team that you partner with, or, there's just all these different kind of considerations. And then there's, getting people comfortable with what you've built. And so like a small example of this, right, is, we went and talked to some regulators and explained to them the whole exchange, right? We explained to them how it was built. Explained to them, the custody solution, explained to them the architecture, and getting them comfortable with what we're doing, and being very transparent about it. And so there's all these different kind of components that go into it that really requires a very unique mix of skills. And I can tell you that, like, although I'm, the face or whatever, the CEO, I'm certainly not doing it all by myself. There's definitely an incredible team that carries very heavy parts of this load. And I think the product and the engineering really, it's like the sexy component, but the compliance and operational component is just as important. In my view, it's more important.
How this is bringing up a little bit of PTSD for me. My internship when I was in college, like before I graduated, was in the operations department at Goldman Sachs for their brokerage, right? So like, I wouldn't say I'm like an expert there, but it's like I remember all of the work that sort of went into what you're describing, right? It's like, oh, we need to balance accounts between brokerages at the end of the day. We need to settle trades within 72 hours of a trade, and just all sorts of crazy things can happen. So like I, as someone who at least had a little bit of insight into that, and then also has spent most of my career as an engineer, I think I agree with you that like the operations piece is actually harder, right? It's like computers will do what you tell them to do as long as you're explicit about it. The things that aren't locked down in code are a little bit trickier. And ultimately, like, there is no world where everything is code. We can try to push in that direction as much as possible, but it's like there's still human involvement. So that's hugely challenging. What I would love to know is like how, I mean, it's like 6 months ago, you decided to make an exchange. You've had to pivot in terms of your hiring, I'm sure. You've had to find who are the people that are experts in financial operations. You've mentioned sort of the legal and compliance side of things. You don't necessarily need to share who it is. I don't know, if you want to or they want to, but how did you go about finding the right people to manage that side of the equation?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really the hardest part of honestly any startup. It's really hiring the right people. I think of
finding good people.
Yeah, if you have a single job, I think as a founder, right, it's finding really good talent. It's not building it yourself. It's finding other people. It's like to help you build it and really eventually to do the majority of the building, to be honest. And I think the biggest piece, honestly, is just personal networks, right? I think we're lucky that, we've had a couple of like really just key people that have had a lot of experience that know, that know a lot of this stuff. Like Can obviously was probably the biggest puzzle piece that got filled. And then obviously, like, I think my wife is definitely, we're just like super lucky that she is also a lawyer and also is a force of nature. Like definitely would not be able to do it without her. Like she is, like she's been helping like for no pay, basically just helping bootstrap the thing, just doing all of that miscellaneous work. And I think that was like kind of the starting point, I think, for making us feel like we were able to do it. And then what we kind of, branched out through personal networks. And I think, a lot of us just, we're lucky to just know a lot of people in the space, and we had some inbound from friends of friends, but it was mostly just people we directly knew. And I think that is, that's honestly ultimately like the unfair advantage for any startup, right? It's like, how do you get that initial momentum? And I think personal networks is the most important thing there.
Nice. I'm smiling a little bit over here to myself because I'm just like, the ambition you guys have to think like we should build an exchange. That sounds hard. We could totally do it though. Let's do it.
That could help with that?
let's do it. Like, let's find the people. Let's make it happen.
Can I just like one comment there?
Yeah.
It's like, this is like, everybody says this. Well, I'm not saying anything new, but it's so like deeply true, which is that every founder is just like, yeah, we can do this. Like, obviously we can do it. But I mean, honestly, we're only 6 months into it, but like, you wouldn't believe the ups and downs over the past 6 months where it's like, it's like Silicon Valley. You know, have you ever seen that show? It's like,
you're on top of the world. You're fucked. You're just
it's just like one disaster after another. And you would not like the incredible like mix of disasters that you run into. It's just so you just would not believe it. You would just not believe it. And they're not like,
do we have a backpack docuseries coming so that we can watch this?
Let's hear some of those stories.
It's just crazy. Yeah, the stories for another day, but it's just like one thing after another. It's like, oh, what, panic here, panic there, panic there. And it's just so different, right? Some things are just so silly and so dumb. And some things are just like, well, you know, we need a, you know, we can't do this without this. And so now we got to solve this problem. And just getting to that point to where you can even launch is just, I just have so much respect for for anybody who's done this. It's just like incredible. But anyway, I'll stop rambling.
A year from now, I want to sit down with you and maybe like one or two members of your team who were also part of these like panic moments and just have an episode where we're just chatting about like all the things that went wrong. And we'll do it. Well, like I said, we'll do it a year from now when like everything is solid and it's not going to like disrupt any brand, whatever. But we can like reminisce and hear about these stories.
Oh yeah, none of it's like really with respect to branding or anything like that. It's more just like challenges and hurdles to overcome that I think. Yeah. You want to
ever growing, ever appearing hurdles that just never stop.
It's funny. I'm talking about it as if it's over, right? But like, there's gonna be a whole another year of this, which is right hilarious. Now. But like, this is the blissful ignorance of founding a company.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you knew what you were getting yourself into, you might not do it. And so it has to be like a first time thing almost. Otherwise, you just might not be willing to bite on it.
Go through it.
Like it's too challenging. I feel like I'm not gonna lie, like I've got this question building up in me, and it's like I'm hesitant to ask it because I don't want to make comparisons to FTX, but I do feel like given that that's sort of like the fall of FTX is the origin here, right? It's like it's a little bit of that like this fucked everyone over, but also now that it's been, like when I'm thinking, as you guys are thinking about the timing of the exchange. So it's like now that it's been 6-ish months since FTX, it's like thinking about it. Oh, there are many good things that exchanges bring to the world. And how do we not throw the baby out with the bathwater? How do we build an exchange that sort of has the positives and remove some of the negatives? And so I have to ask, like, what is the thing that makes this different than an FTX? I feel like I know. It's like I don't know you personally necessarily, but I feel like I know you from Twitter and our conversations in the past. And like you are someone I would throw my hat behind. It's like I trust you and your team to build something great. But for people who maybe don't have that same trust, it's like, what is the thing that they can see and latch onto as like, this is not going to be like FTX or any other thing that has fucked people over in the past?
Yeah, no, it's a super important question. And also thank you for the flattering words. I deeply appreciate that. But I mean, there's the marketing answer, and then there's like the real nuanced answer. So the marketing answer is don't trust, verify, right? So we want to build this thing, and this is genuinely true. We are building this thing so that you can have cryptographic kind of verification of the state of the exchange at any given point in time. So this is everything from the reserves. So every day, we really want to push like the boundary here. And like, I think most exchanges are doing this like once a month or something like that, or a quarter or whatever. I don't know the exact numbers, but minimally every day we want to publish proofs where you actually have snapshots of the entire state of the exchange, all the balances for all the users, attested to cryptographically on a blockchain like Solana. And then, you can pull out your phone or your extension or your website and verify those proofs with the cryptography with code that you can pull and run yourself, and verify that your money is there.
So that's that mean all the reserves will be on chain?
So that I guess that's a technical question. The answer is like yes and no. So technically all the money is on chain. The nuance is that the exchange is basically built like a blockchain. So what do I mean by that? I mean that there are multiple different validators that deterministically execute the state of the exchange, every order placement, every deposit, every withdrawal, every order cancel, etc. Anything that writes to that state is executed in this system. It's like a separate blockchain, effectively. Think of it like an application-specific blockchain. And so to answer your question, is the money on chain, right? It's like, well, yes, the money is held in an address on chain, and that is controlled by all of the different validators on the exchange network. So there's no single point of failure. No single validator instance can unilaterally steal all of the money. And then there's even more nuance to this, right? So this is the way we've built the exchange from an engineering point of view. Private blockchain with proofs attested to daily. It's funny, you could actually think of it kind of like an L2 from that point of view.
That's crazy cool. We can circle back to it because you were sort of saying like the marketing answer and then the nuanced answer. So we can come back to the technical architecture if there's time.
Yeah, for sure. So that is that's the starting point, and that's, from my view, table stakes. Is like we want to build a very robust, exchange that's as transparent as humanly possible, where you can verify it, you don't have to trust it, and you can, verify the balances and then actually verify the actual execution with a historical archive of all the authenticated messages to have ever passed through the system. This is exactly what a blockchain does. Now that archive is not going to be publicly available. It might be public, might be available to like regulators or whoever. But for privacy reasons, we're not going to just like post that on Twitter or whatever. But we do. This is something that we have, right? And so you can, in theory, use this just like a blockchain to go back to any point in time and be able to like look at what happens. And I think that auditable log is one of the really incredible kind of things that a blockchain gives you that makes it really great purpose-built financial technology. But I digress. So that's the starting point, and that's what I would describe as the marketing answer. The real nuanced answer, which is very boring for people, but it's true. If you genuinely want to do this, you have to solve this FTX problem in with multiple different angles. So the first angle is the engineering point of view. That's the hot, sexy point of view, maybe because I'm an engineer, maybe nobody else thinks that's sexy. But there's other small things, right? Like corporate governance that is extremely important. So one of the places where I think FTX went wrong is that it had a dictator, namely SBF, that could basically do whatever he wanted. I don't know the full details of the FTX corporate structure, but I'm pretty sure there was no like proper board of directors. And that's like a small thing that is extremely important. Corporate governance not only ensures that you're doing things that are creating value for shareholders, but it's like it's like an additional regulator, right? The board needs to be watching the CEO in the same way the CEO watches the company or the people operating the company. and keeping that person accountable, right? And double checking their work and making sure that they're being truthful and making sure that what they're doing is they're making high integrity decisions and creating value for the shareholders in obviously in a legal way. But corporate governance is extremely important, and not only corporate governance at the board level, but also corporate governance just within the company itself. I think, people, it's hard to maybe fully appreciate this, but FTX, if you talk to people that work there, it was like a crazy place. Like, it had incredibly smart people, but it was like, obviously I didn't, I when I was like working alongside some of those folks, like it was really from the perspective of like an outsider, if you want to put it in those terms. Like, I didn't work on the exchange itself. I didn't work on the trading systems, although I worked on the Alameda trading systems from January 2018 to March 2018, before FTX was even started. And then I eventually came back to work on Solana in 2020. But I was really working on the open source kind of crypto world. But if you like, FTX didn't have like proper management, right? It was kind of just like hire really smart people and have them go just like solve problems, and like they'll figure it out. And that was kind of like the structure. Versus like we have like in compliance teams and like a treasurer and people whose jobs is nothing but holding people accountable. Like we just brought on a pretty awesome person to basically be the treasurer for the company, and his entire job is basically just like look at the wallets, do user by user asset reconciliation, tell the devs what we need to build for like the admin dashboards to be able to generate reports. But that's like another piece of oversight that's within the company. That's not really at the board level, but it's like this person is holding other people accountable. And being able to build up those social structures within the company is extremely important, not only for productivity reasons, but also to have accountability and making sure people are operating with higher integrity and reflecting the values of the institution. And so building up this social layer is extremely important, in addition to obviously the engineering point of view. And then there's like maybe the third point, which is auditability, not only from the cryptographic side but from the more traditional financial side. So have external auditors obviously going through the balance sheets and things like that. And there's obviously that's not foolproof. Obviously you can there's gotchas there, obviously, as FTX kind of showed, but nevertheless it's this defense in depth where you have multiple different kind of angles to attack the problem at, and you really need to go after each one of them. And then obviously you have the fourth angle, which is the prudential supervision, where you have regulators actively monitoring the exchange, right? And this is why one of the reasons why the VARA license was so valuable to us, which is now we have a regulator that globally supervises us. That is, that's a very rigorous standard for compliance, where we can't just not tell them the user balances. We can't just not segregate assets because they'll know, because they're literally actively investigating this. And so having all of these different aspects is extremely important. And so that's what I mean by it's a nuanced answer, right? It's not just about the cryptographic security, which is maybe the coolest thing and why blockchains are so interesting. But I think also having the social properties and the social layer to make sure that people are doing the right things is equally as important. And that's how you create important institutions.
I could see why, a CEO might try to avoid those sometimes, feeling like, well, I need to be able to make decisions quickly and efficiently. But I also feel like there's sort of an opposing view where it's like, well, of course I want a social, of course I want a circle of people I trust around me to carry this burden with me, right? It's like there are, the goal here is to manage assets for as many people as will let you manage their assets, right? And so that is quite a burden, right? Like that's taking on a lot. And so feeling like it's entirely on your shoulders, I think, could be daunting for some. Do you feel that at all?
I think So yes, I definitely feel the enormous responsibility. I think it's a challenge, right? Because on the one hand, you don't want to carry such a huge burden that you cripple under the pressure. But on the other hand, you might want to diffuse some of that responsibility, but you don't want to diffuse it so that nobody is responsible and the wrong things happen and you have like the abdication of responsibility. What you really want is, I think, somewhere in the middle where you have multiple people, multiple levels of redundancy, that we have all these people that feel that level of responsibility, so that the right things happen. And I think, I don't think there's any way around feeling that enormous burden, and you really just need to find people that rise to the occasion. It's certainly not for everyone. And I think this is why like having multiple kind of levels of defense is super important, right? People attacking this from the financial angle, from the regulation angle, from the engineering angle. And then obviously, having the right, operations in place to, make sure that the right things are happening. And I think, yeah, it's definitely a ton of pressure. It's enormous, an enormous amount of responsibility. But I think, I don't know, somebody's got to do it. And I think, I don't know, might as well be us.
I love that. I honestly love that, that mindset. It's like, hey, the world needs this. Someone's got to do it. May as well be me. All right, let's go. Let's get to work. That's awesome. I love, the analogy of exchanges being like a bridge between sort of the existing financial system and this sort of new financial system that we're all, trying to create and build out. And I also love that you guys are trying to cover the entire spectrum of the crypto experience, from full self-custody, full degen, if you will, to to the exchange. And I don't even want to say it's like full. Yeah, I think self-custody to full custody
spectrum of custody.
I mean, that's the way to put it, because it's like you can be just as in the crypto world and still be operating on an exchange, because there just are things you can't do on chain yet. There are financial operations that can't be done. So that's it's freaking awesome. I'm so excited. I got my email that I could sign up the other day, and I was a little sad that US is not yet on that list of supported jurisdictions. Do you have a time frame for that, you think?
Yeah, so I think the US is really challenging for a bunch of reasons. So it's challenging from the perspective of time and money. So it costs probably, I don't know the exact number. I'm kind of pulling some numbers out of thin air here, but tens of millions of dollars, maybe $10 million to go get all the licenses in all 50 states. And not only that, but also it takes about a year or two probably to go do that. And there's probably some variance there, but that's morally speaking, I think, roughly correct. And so what we will probably do in the near term for the US is we will partner with other companies that have the licenses and use their custody solution and use their liquidity. Now, on the one hand, this is great because it allows us to go to market and it's in the product and you don't know the difference. But on the other hand, you're now subject to that company's standards for compliance and for custody and engineering. And that's a scary thing.
Because you lose like that cryptographic auditing that you sort of mentioned.
Exactly. So I think we're trying to navigate this. I don't have a great answer for you, but I think that is a path forward. I think there's a couple like pretty really great options that we're looking at right now. But I think that would be the most immediate path forward. And then obviously if we do well, then we'll get our own licenses and things of that nature. But I also think that Coinbase is a great product. I think they're a really incredible institution. I think they've done a great job in the US. I have a ton of respect for that kind of company and that product. And I think really for us, the market is internationally. That's where the opportunity is. That's where you have all of these heterogeneous cultures and regulations and product offerings to build, where we can really go find a niche there and do really well there. And that's kind of like, it's kind of weird because I think we're all American. We all kind of come from the US, and it's kind of easy to forget that, well, the crypto world is really an international industry. It's not US centric at all. And the US is just getting, I mean, I love the US. I really hope it embraces crypto eventually. But I think for us, really, the market and the opportunities internationally. And I think, that's kind of some of the story there. But we want to be in the US as fast as humanly possible.
Got it. I mean, that like you mentioning the cost there sort of reminded me, you sort of mentioned capital requirements earlier. And that is a huge hurdle, a huge like moat to creating exchanges. What have you guys had to have subsequent raises and things in order to make all this happen?
Yeah. So I think we're lucky for two reasons. So the first reason is, in the beginning of the exchange, there was, namely one or a couple angels, and then the founding team that were able to kind of bootstrap it with just a small amount of capital and just experience. So one nice thing about kind of our team is that we can minimize costs, I think, in ways that I think a lot of other teams can't because of just the experience. Like I could tell you firsthand, like if it were just me alone, I would be spending so much money on legal bills because I'd have to get on calls with lawyers every day and ask them, well, how do we do X, Y, and Z? And I think we're really fortunate that we've been able to minimize a lot of those costs just because of the team. And I certainly can't take credit for much or any of that, to be totally honest. And so I think we've had a fortunate starting point as a result of that.
Hire good people. That's the name of the game. Hire good people and know good people to build good things. Like, sounds great. We're getting pretty close to time here. There's a couple of like rapid fire questions I want to ask you. I posted on Twitter that we were going to like have a conversation. Like, what do people want to know about Backpack Exchange? And like, pretty much the exact questions that you would imagine people would ask is, do MadLads get early access? Which that's already come true. Like, or KYC, the first phase 1 has already happened. MadLads have already gotten early access in jurisdictions that are allowed. But can you give like any amount of, I don't want to say like roadmap necessarily, but like any broad timelines that you're willing and able to share of what are the next phases and like estimated time on when you think like first customers will be able to use Backpack Exchange as an exchange?
Yeah. So I assume this podcast is not going to come out for about a week. So I'll go ahead and just say it. So this week is the answer. So we're going to...
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So the goal is to list the first markets by the 20th. So as long as this podcast doesn't come out by then, here's what we're going to do.
It'll come out in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. So there's going to be the first market listed with a new token. We're going to list, we're going to list a new token that's coming out. And so
a new token not being from Backpack and the team, but an ecosystem token.
Yeah, not it's not our token. No, it's an established project that's been in the broader.
I think I might have a guess.
Yeah, you could probably guess. Yeah.
Nice. I think it's the people we're having a conversation with next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Nice.
Okay, that's I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
I'm also just so jealous though, because being US bound, I don't have access to anything.
I know. The other rapid fire question I would ask you, and this is the last one because you've already addressed all the other questions that people had asked because you're that good. Is Backpack Exchange going to be open source or source available? Like the Backpack wallet was source available for quite a long time. Eventually you guys archived the repo and then went closed source. Now it makes sense because you were doing exchange things and you were doing all that. So are you going to go back to some amount of source available either for the wallet or for the exchange too?
Yeah, so we made the repo private purely for marketing reasons. And I think that ended up being a very good decision.
I think it worked.
And the devs do some marketing. But no, the intention is that there's some work to do to extract it out. But I really want to put the extension source available minimally and then go from there. So we need to, right now it's like we have a repo with everything in it. And so for the extension, we're absolutely going to put it back into the public repo. We just need to ship. It's like not on the top of the priority list right now, but we'll do it, I think, relatively soon. I think the end state will probably, don't take my word for this. This is kind of up in the air. I'm thinking about this in real time on this podcast. But I would expect basically the extension to be source available minimally, maybe even change the license. I don't know. I morally want to change the license. I see no reason why we can't change the license, but I need to talk to the team about that first. But that would be the extension. I think the wallet, the exchange, I think will probably stay closed source. That's pretty important, I think, just for marketing reasons. There's a lot of projects that want to do like this, for example, this launch that we're doing this week. The project has asked us not to announce anything until they're ready to announce it. So people don't know the token that's being listed or the market that's being listed, but that's all in the code base. And so there's a very pragmatic reason, just from a marketing point of view, to keep the exchange stuff closed source. There's other things you can argue, maybe security through obscurity, maybe it's great. That's not security, obviously. It's your CS 101. But I think it's it is something that's greater than zero, although maybe negligible. We certainly aren't relying on that, but there is something there. There's just as a business. To be frank, I think as an I've worked on so much open source, right? And I think open source entitlement's a real thing, right? And when you have a company, you have so much. I'm just like stepping into a level that's maybe not super relevant, but I think it just opens up attack vectors, right? Where you have people complaining about stuff, like why are you listing this market before the market gets listed? And it's like all this chaos that comes with running an open source project in addition to a company. And you could just like minimize a lot of that friction, I think, by just, working on the repo and private. So I think we'll probably have some mix of those just for practical reasons. So I think probably wallet extension will be minimally source available, exchange probably just to stay private, and then the mobile app, which has both, probably will just be the more conservative of the two, which will probably just be private for the same reasons, right? We don't want to leak stuff. But that's my current answer, subject to change, but that's kind of more or less how I feel at the moment.
Awesome. Well, you've already given us more time than we asked for, so I will just ask one more question, which is like, we're like currently in kind of like a bullish moment for Solana. I'm obviously there's some excitement there in the ecosystem. I just want to know how you're feeling about things, and I don't even necessarily mean token price. I just mean how are you personally feeling? You've got a lot on your shoulders. You got a lot that you're working on. It's exciting. It's stressful. It's all kinds of things. And I'd love to finish with like, how is Armani doing?
So I don't know if you guys felt this way in school, but I always felt in school, like namely before exams, that I would just be extremely stressed out. And then it would be like, I would go through the exam and I wouldn't even remember it happening. It's just like your brain's just working on autopilot. You're just like going. And then after the exam, you're like, wow, it's over. Like that was like, it just like kind of happens. Right. And it's like kind of like when you're driving, right? If you drive, you like get into the car and then you get out of the car. It's like, what happened in the middle, right?
Shit, how did I get here?
And that's not to say that I'm on autopilot and not present. Right. But it is to say that I think, to be totally honest, I'm thinking about nothing other than like the next challenge and the next minute of the next day. And it's really just like tunnel vision might be like the wrong word, but it kind of feels like that way.
You're focused.
Focused. Yeah. Focus is really it's like locked in. Right. And it's like the game's on right now. It's just like a crucial moment. And I'm just trying to, take one step at a time. So not looking back, not looking forward, just kind of trying to be present and do the things that need to get done. So that's the honest, to God answer.
Awesome. Cool, man. Awesome. Well, I'm like always, thanks so much for what you and the team are building.
Thank you.
Love what you guys are offering to the ecosystem. And man, I look forward to chatting with you about this when you're not in it and seeing like what are your retroactive views on things. It's going to be fun. I'm so excited to see what you guys build. So excited to like chat with you about personally what it was like throughout the process. It's just, all of that is fascinating to me. So thanks so much for jumping on. I know the time zone thing is tough, but thanks for working with us.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Armani.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, James.
All right. To the any final words you want to give the listeners or?
Nothing really, other than if you if you have the time, like would love for you folks to try out the exchange beta. We're rolling it out this week, and download the mobile apps and give us feedback and that'd be wonderful.
Love it.
Awesome.
All right, man. To the listeners, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.